So my presentation is about building Rails API, which is actually very simple. What's Rails API? You know, okay, Ben just told you about what is Rails API, right? And what is JSON Rails API? Ben has told already. So he was telling you about that in theory. I will be telling you about that in practice. So how we did the maximum speed for processing JSON in Rails API. We had one project recently. So it's one of our clients in Sweetla Systems. He came to us and he asked, I have a Perl API. Perl, okay? You know what's Perl. Perl is good. Who likes Perl? Okay, sorry? Sorry? Okay. He told us that he has a Perl script which is processing lots of requests very fast. So he puts, for example, 100 JSON objects into the database, and he does that, and each JSON object is about 10 kilobytes. Okay, you know what's kilobytes? So 100 objects is 1 megabyte. 1 megabyte in 1 second, with all processing, with all routing, with all ORM, and so on. And we told, okay, we don't know Perl. I don't know Perl. Let's try Rails. What do you think we got? It was very, very hard. So this is what I have already told you. And this is just a piece of stats. In 2012, Twitter was processing 600 requests per second. So, and we have 100 objects per second as well. What's the big difference? Is that easy? Yeah, it's easy. Okay, 7 seconds. we just created usual Rails application with one route, okay? Postings, create, and so on, with one controller, with active record, with action controller base, and we were using Rubyc for benchmarking, right? You know what's Rubyc? Who uses Rubyc? Okay, cool. But Perl did that in 1 second, and Rails does that in 7 seconds. What we have to do? What we can do actually? What can we do? Useless Ruby, right? Ben just told you, if you want fast, use less Ruby, use less Rails. It's just several stuff about these 7 seconds, you remember? And what is the problem? What's the problem of putting 100 objects into the database? The problem is that actually we had kind of one big client who was sending all these objects synchronously in one thread and without any parallelism, okay? So it's not like you can run 100 unicorns and get one object in one unicorn and get it very super fast. No, it's coming just one request by request, okay? That's the problem. And we all know what's being done in the ORM, right? In Active Record or Data Mapper or something. So our requirement was that we had to return the final IDs and final errors at once. So we can't do any background processing. You say background processing is cool, right? But we can't do it. So we need to do everything in one thread. This is kind of how the JSON object looks like. And this is the database. It's very similar. So we just put these parameters into the same fields. And this takes like 7 seconds in Rails. What's the heck? So the model is just usual model, right? It has validates, it has serializations, It has pre-processing to check values. We have the usual controller. Everything is just one, just usual Rails app. And first thing that we have done is that we have changed our server hardware. Instead of some outdated processor, 4 GB of RAM, for Perl, this is okay. You see, Perl script does 1 second on this hardware. But for Ruby on Rails, we had to do very, very different hardware, which costs much more money. And still, we had to face the situation that this Rails application was processing still even slower than Perl on that outdated processor and RAM and so on. So what can we do? What can we do with the drunken sailor, right? What can we optimize? To find SQL, right? So to find the best solution, we tried several benchmarks. Finally, we processed 40 different types of configuration of our application. And so I will show you very, very cool chart in the end, okay? If you don't understand, you'll see in the end what we have got. Okay? We have tried several ORMs. First, this is Active Record. Active Record, everyone knows what's that. Then Data Mapper, SQL, ActiveModel plus SQL. ActiveModel, you know, it gives you some validations, it gives you some serializations and so on, but we just used it as a model. And the last one, just direct SQL, which was rendered in controller itself. So okay, question to you. Can you imagine how Perl script is working with these requests? What's your thoughts about that? Okay. Right. No ORM. It was doing just direct SQL query into the database. We were very upset with the Rails performance, but finally we had to admit that for this particular issue, we had to, so direct SQL, as you know, it gave us the biggest speed. Also, we tried, as Ben told you, about this middleware that is included into the actual action controller. We tried 2 different approaches for the action controller, base and metal. Okay? And we used 2 different types of benchmarking. First is New Relic. New Relic is cool, but finally but New Relic, for example, do you know that New Relic has kind of user-specified metrics, right? You can specify a block, and then you use some user-defined metric identifier, and then it counts the time spent in this block. So New Relic just spends some time for that as well. And second benchmark strategy is that we are taking first timestamp and then subtract 2 values. Very simple. What's the problem with Active Record or any ORM? Any ORM is creating, first, if you create posting.new, right, it spends time for instantiating, for creating the objects, right? And any parameter that you pass into the initializer takes, in different ORMs, it takes sometimes very long time just to put these parameters into correct fields and to count all these, callbacks and so on. So biggest time frame in our application was used by Active Record because it just spent lots of time for instantiation. Actually, as you can see, 1.2 seconds was spent, of those 1.4, you see, 1.2 was spent to instantiate these active record objects, right? SQL is better, but still. Plus some time for validation. SQL. What we can do? SQL. SQL has done almost what we kind of tried to get, right? 1 second, 1.05. So it spends 0.8 seconds for instantiating and everything else for SQL. Data mapper, 1.11. Instant initializing takes about 0.9 seconds, and everything else is done by validation. ActiveModel. ActiveModel was pretty cool, but still it spends time for creating the objects in the Ruby virtual machine. So basically, when we came to our last approach, we decided, so we removed any class. We do everything just in controller, you know? We create values array, we create the errors array, we create everything just in one script, because each method that you call or each object that you create, it takes time, okay? So this last metric, as I call it, it's called like one line Ruby code, that you put everything in one line and finally it works as fast as possible, okay? And what we got, 0.7 seconds. Okay, so this time seems like we fit into this 1 second, right? Once again, the active record shows you kind of 1.4. The data mapper and SQL 1 second. ActiveModel is like 0.9. This one 0.7. But what about else? What else can we optimize in Rails? Controller. This is what we left in the ActionControllerMetal, what is needed to process JSON and put into the database. So this is 5 modules that we needed. And this is the list of modules that we just dropped off, okay? You can see the difference. Actually, ActionControllerMetal didn't give us much boost, but still it was like 20% on each one. So you can see SQL took 0.8 seconds, data mapper 95, and so on. On this point, so basically, finally, we didn't do ActionControllerMetal. We just did with base, okay? Just because we have different stuff in this application, and we decided not to have headache of different controllers. But what about New Relic? So for each object that comes to your application, this block is called 100 times. So 100 times the trace execution scope is called, and the block is passed there, and block is executed, and then lump the returns, and so on. And if you have several benchmarks, for example, 5 benchmarks, right, for validation, instantiation, and so on, so you just waste your time on calling this New Relic metrics. And this is a different approach, right? I have inserts array, I have time frame for each logic piece, and I just put these inserts into one array. Very simple. Finally, okay, this is the list values. You see, with direct SQL code in the controller, we got 0.36 seconds, okay? So compared to 1.4, this is like 4 times faster. and even active record with everything else still is very slow. So you can choose. ActiveModel is actually also quite good. And the stats for Action Controller base without New Relic, it's kind of the same, right? Almost same. So this is the stats. If you like statistics, you can see that active record has done more than 1 second in any case. Removing New Relic allowed us to get into 1 second in basically in each of these approaches, and finally the inline SQL is just very, very super fast, right? Okay. Actually, that's it.